I woke up. The dream, or whatever it was, clung to my mind like damp earth. It wasn't a nightmare, not in the screaming, wake up in a cold sweat kind of way. It was more exhaustive. A lifetime lived alone, in the ruins of something vast. The details faded as quickly as they came, leaving behind only a feeling of immense weariness, a lingering taste of dust and decay in my mouth. I swung my legs off the bed, feeling the cool floorboards beneath my feet. The kitchen was quiet, the pale morning light just beginning to filter through the blinds. I shuffled over to the coffee maker. I always lined it up perfectly with the edge of the counter. It was a small thing, a habit. But this morning it was noticeably off-kilter, angled ever so slightly to the right. Not by much, maybe an inch. I frowned. I also noticed it felt cool to the touch, and there was a sheen of condensation on its side. Water, I assumed. But I had washed and dried it thoroughly last night. I was sure of it. I ran a finger along the damp metal. It wasn't cold, not exactly, but it felt fresh, like it had just been used. I told myself I must have been more tired than I thought, more careless. Sometimes these small things get away from you. Just a minor oversight. I nudged it back into place, a quiet click of plastic against the counter. It felt better, aligned. At the office, the fluorescent lights hummed with their usual low drone, a dull background noise to the data analysis. My job, basically, was looking for patterns where other people couldn't see them. Irony, I guess. I was deep into a quarterly report, numbers blurring into endless rows, when it happened. A flicker, just for a fraction of a second. A string of characters, not English, not any language I recognized, superimposed itself over the text on my monitor. It was sharp, angular, almost like something etched into old stone. And it was gone, as quickly as it had appeared. I blinked, then rubbed my eyes, a dull ache throbbing behind them. Must be the screen fatigue, I thought. Or maybe I was just hungry. My stomach rumbled a little too loudly. I leaned closer to the screen, staring. Nothing. Just the endless rows of financial data. I tried to scroll back, to see if it was some kind of embedded text. No. I even tried hitting print screen, just in case. The screenshot showed only the report, perfectly normal. Honestly, it was ridiculous. I ran a few quick searches online. Debris, broken world, strange ancient symbols. Nothing relevant came up. The search results were just travel blogs and news about construction. My mind went back to the dream, to those very same glyphs carved into the side of a rusted, collapsed billboard. The memory was fleeting, like trying to catch smoke. I gave up on the search. But a cold, hollow feeling had started in my chest, a shiver that had nothing to do with the office air conditioning. I tugged at the collar of my shirt, a brief, sharp pull that didn't help anything. A few days later, the feeling built. I was driving home, stuck in the usual Seattle traffic. Rain misted the windshield, horns blared. It was just a normal Tuesday. I stopped at a red light, watching the cars inch forward in front of me. Then, over the low rumble of engines and the incessant honking, I heard it. A faint sound, like a whisper almost, but coarse. A low moan, carried on a gust of wind that wasn't there. It came with the brittle sound of metal twisting, stretching, and something else. A crackle, like dry wood snapping under immense weight. Like the sounds from my dreams. My head snapped around. I scanned the intersection. There was nothing, just the endless concrete and glass, the usual city chaos. No accident, no construction, no source for the noise. My grip tightened on the steering wheel, knuckles white. And then, for a split second, the world shifted. It was like a transparent overlay, an almost imperceptible distortion. The bus stop across the street, the cheerful coffee shop, the apartment building, All of it seemed to ripple, to become translucent. And beneath that, or perhaps instead of that, was something else. A city of skeletal skyscrapers, draped in rust and shadows, with patches of orangish fire smoldering in the distance. The sky was an ugly, bruised purple. It was the world from the dream, the ruined place. Then it was gone, just as quickly as it had come. The bus stop was solid again, the coffee shop inviting. I blinked. My throat felt dry, like I'd swallowed sand. My heart was pounding, a frantic drum against my ribs. I knew I hadn't dozed off. I told myself it was just stress, a trick of the light, maybe an ear ringing. Everyone heard things sometimes, right? But the tremor in my hands, the cold sweat prickling my forehead, they felt too real for a simple trick. I tried to breathe, deep, slow breaths, but they hitched in my chest. "No way," I muttered, my voice thin. I'm not hallucinating." The light turned green. I pressed the accelerator, my foot heavy, just wanting to get home. That night, getting home didn't feel like an escape. It felt like walking into something else. The apartment, my safe place, felt different. I started checking the locks, not just once, 3 times for each lock. The deadbolt, the doorknob lock. I'd turn the key, feel the satisfying click, then turn it again, and again, just to be sure. It became a ritual. Then I went around drawing all the curtains, pulling them tight, making sure no sliver of the outside world could peek in. It wasn't about privacy anymore. It felt like I was sealing myself off, containing something within, or keeping something out. I wasn't sure which. I found myself digging out my old emergency backpack from the back of the closet. I hadn't touched it in years. Inside were the usual things: a flashlight, some first aid supplies, a few protein bars. I checked the expiration dates. Most were still good. I put it next to the door, just in case. A cold thought, sharp and unwelcome, sliced through my mind. Those shapes on the screen, those sounds from the traffic, the city, they weren't just in my head. They were real, or they were trying to be real. It wasn't just Jacob Miller, the tired data analyst, anymore. It felt like I was the only person who could see the world decaying, a quiet rot just beneath the surface. I dragged a heavy armchair and pushed it against the front door, the legs scraping loudly on the hardwood floor. It was stupid. I knew it wouldn't stop anything, but I did it anyway. It wasn't a conscious decision, not really. It just felt like the right thing to do. I came back to the apartment after another day of work. The silence hit me first, heavier than usual. I put my keys on the small table by the door. I walked into the kitchen, meaning to fix myself something easy for dinner. I set my wallet down on the granite counter. It slid. Not much, just a fraction of an inch, but it wasn't the usual solid thud. It moved as if something had nudged it, a subtle shift without any obvious cause. I paused, looked at it. "Must have put it down crooked," I mumbled. My hand reached out, and I deliberately, carefully, placed it back, centered, perfectly straight. I watched it for a long minute. It stayed. I nodded to myself, then went to change my clothes in the bedroom. When I came back out, the wallet was still there, perfectly centered. My heart didn't exactly calm. I poured myself a glass of water, trying to ignore the lingering unease. I looked out the living room window, though the curtains were drawn. It was a habit, a way to collect my thoughts, but thinking only brought the sounds back, the moaning, the bending metal. I took a slow sip of water. Then I heard it, a distinct creak, beneath the bed. I was walking past it, that's all, just walking by. But the sound, It was a weighted sound, like someone had just gotten off the floor, from underneath the bed. Not the settling of the building, not the floorboard shifting. It was too precise. And then a smell, musty, like old dirt, but underneath that, something else, something foul. The scent of something that had been dead for a long, long time. It was coming from the corner of the room, near the closet. There was no source for it. There was just nothing. I didn't even try to rationalize it this time. Not really. I just felt my blood run cold. I jolted back, slamming my back into the wall near the bedroom door. My hand, without thinking, went to the doorknob, checking the latch. My heart hammered, a frantic animal trying to escape my chest. I stared at the space under my bed. A thin, cold draft seemed to emanate from beneath it, though the room temperature was fine. My breath hitched. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers clumsy. I found the flashlight app and aimed the beam under the bed. It cut through the shadows. Just dust bunnies, a few forgotten books. Nothing, not a thing. My voice felt rough, strained. "That wasn't a stray cat," I whispered. I couldn't finish the thought. I just stood there, phone light trembling in my hand. Later that night, much later, I was curled up on the sofa, trying to watch some stupid comedy on my old flat-screen TV. Anything to distract myself. The room was dark, save for the pale blue glow from the screen. My eyes unfocused, drifting to the dark glass of the window, seeing my own vague reflection there. But then, it wasn't my reflection. Not quite. For a moment, it was something else. A blurry shape, taller than me, thinner, standing completely still. Its back was to me, facing the same way I was, towards the TV. It was like a shadow, yes, but not a shadow. It was more solid than that. It didn't move. I saw its arm, a pale, almost translucent arm, slowly reaching out, towards the coffee table, towards the remote control. My heart seized. It moved with a lag, a horrifying, almost imperceptible delay, compared to what I knew I was doing, or what I wasn't doing. There was no sound in the room other than the low mumble of the TV, no physical movement, just me and that thing, that faded version of myself, a corrupt and broken copy, reaching for the remote. I held my breath, frozen, staring at the ghostly arm extending, slowly, slowly, and then the TV screen went completely black. The room plunged into a sudden, deep quiet. The silence wasn't empty. It felt full, heavy. It was almost deafening. I sat there, in that heavy silence, for what felt like an eternity. My entire body felt like it was humming, a low, frantic vibration just beneath my skin. I didn't dare move, didn't dare breathe too loud. After a while, I slowly, deliberately reached for my phone. My thumb felt clumsy as I tried to type. I scrolled through articles, searched for anything. Strange reflections, ghosts in mirrors, hearing weird sounds. Something, anything, to make sense of what just happened. I stumbled across an old forum post about something called deafening silence syndrome. The title alone felt like a punch to the gut. It talked about people hearing sounds that weren't there, seeing things that weren't real. A part of me, a small, desperate part, flared with a flicker of hope. Maybe it was just that, a syndrome, a word for it. I clicked on the link, read through the comments. Most were dismissive, but then I saw a pinned comment right at the top. It was short, to the point. "I heard those moans," it read. Then I started seeing cracks on the walls. Now I can't type tomorrow on my keyboard. Maybe it's coming, slowly, and all of us are just its countdown clocks. My blood ran cold again, a second deeper chill. I looked down at my phone's virtual keyboard. My fingers trembled slightly. I had to try it. I had to know. T, O, M, O, R, R, O, W. The letters appeared, perfectly normal. I let out a long, ragged breath, a shiver running down my spine. See? Just a random comment, a desperate person. I wasn't like that. But before I could even process the relief, my phone vibrated. A low, insistent hum. A text message from an unknown number. Just one word. No. I found myself with a book in my hands again. Just something to ground myself, you know? Something real, something solid. It was an old paperback, a thriller, nothing deep, just enough to keep my eyes moving. The warm yellow glow from my bedside lamp made the pages look almost inviting. I read a few pages, then felt a dry itch in my throat. Water. I needed water. I put the book face down on the small table next to the bed, the spine cracked open, marking my spot. I walked to the kitchen, the floorboards creaking under my weight. My apartment, it had always been a quiet place. Now it felt like every little sound was amplified, watched. I gulped down a glass of cold water, trying to clear my head, trying to push away the text message, the reflection, the creeping dread of everything that wasn't making any sense. When I came back to the bedroom, the book, it was open to a different page. Not just a few pages off, but further in, maybe a third of the way through. And tucked inside, marking that new page, was something else. A small, crumpled piece of paper, silvery gray. It looked like part of some old food wrapper, maybe from a protein bar. Not mine. Definitely not mine. I didn't eat those kinds of things anymore. Not since... Well, not since I started hoarding the real food. I picked it up. It felt brittle, a bit greasy, and it smelled. A faint, earthy, musty smell, like damp soil. But underneath that, something else too. Something vaguely metallic, almost like old blood, dried up. I scrunched my nose, shaking my head. Where the hell did this come from? I flung the scrap of paper into the wastebasket next to the table, a tiny rustle as it hit the cheap plastic. I picked up the book, closed it, and placed it face down again, just like it had been. "Did I forget?" I whispered, my voice cracked, dry. "Did I just forget where I was? Forget putting that in there?" I didn't know anymore. I honestly just didn't know. The next few days blurred. I tried to do normal things. Cleaning, that was it. Cleaning. It was supposed to be therapeutic, right? It was supposed to make things feel in order. I found myself in the kitchen, staring at the old refrigerator. It seemed like a good place to start. A bit dusty on top. Needed a good wipe down. I still went for the water, reaching for the handle to open the door. My fingers brushed the metal. A sharp, stinging jolt shot through my hand. Not a huge shock, not like a power line, but enough to make me snatch my hand back, enough to make my arm throb for a second. I stared at the metal handle, my heart suddenly racing. The fridge was old, sure, but it had always worked fine. Never had it given me a shock before. I rubbed my palm, the skin still tingling. And then it hit me. A flash, like a bullet to the brain. The dream, the memory. I was kneeling on a floor, dark, damp, smelling of ozone. A broken wire, sparking, close to my face. My hand, reaching out reflexively, too slow. And then the white-hot pain, the final convulsion. That had been it. That was how he died. A fucking electrical short from a piece of old tech. My breath hitched. "No," I breathed, barely audible. "No, it's just a loose wire, Jacob. That's probably it. An old appliance, just a coincidence." My voice wavered. It was thin, pathetic. My hand was still trembling, the sensation of the shock lingering, a cold, burning reminder. I didn't touch the fridge again, not for water, not for anything. The hoarding intensified. I started gathering everything I could: canned goods, water bottles, batteries, anything. My apartment began to look less like a home and more like a collection point for someone preparing for a siege. I stacked cans into unstable pyramids in the corner of the living room, a fortress of processed peaches and beans. Clothes, old blankets, anything I could find, I stuffed into plastic bags and stacked them against the windows. Not to block the light, God no, I wanted all the light I could get, but to protect, to barricade myself from the outside, from whatever was out there, or whatever was in here. I even tried to board up the windows. Don't ask me why. I don't know how to use a drill. I work with data, not power tools. But I found an old drill in a box, some dusty screws, and a few warped pieces of plywood in the building's shared storage unit. Somehow, instinctively, I knew how to do it. The smell of sawdust filled the air, thick and cloying. I was so focused, sweating, my hands aching as I tried to screw the planks into the window frame. I was standing on an old metal folding chair, the kind you use for extra guests at Thanksgiving. It was flimsy, cheap. I reached up, drill buzzing, trying to line up a screw. And then the chair wobbled. Not just a little sway from my weight. It was a sharp, aggressive lurch, like someone had kicked one of its legs, or pushed me. I felt it, a sudden firm shove against my lower back, a ghost of a hand, cold and insistent. My balance was gone. The drill flew from my hand, clattering to the floor. I tried to catch myself, flailing, but it was useless. I felt gravity pull me down, felt the rush of air. My head slammed against the sharp edge of my desk, a jarring, sickening crack. A burst of white lights behind my eyes, then a dull, throbbing pain. I tasted blood, metallic and hot. My hand instinctively went to my temple, and when I pulled it away, it was sticky, crimson. The shock of the impact cleared my head for a terrifying second. That, too. Another memory, sharp and cruel. Tripping over a loose bit of rebar in the ruins. A foolish, stupid fall. Head first onto cracked concrete. That had been it. Another meaningless end. My breathing turned ragged. My chest felt tight, my lungs burning. I wasn't hallucinating this. Not the pain, not the blood. I gripped my bloody hand, digging my nails into my palm. "No," I rasped, tears stinging my eyes. "Not coincidences. None of it. It wants me dead. It wants me to fall, to trip, to be shocked. It's making it happen." I stared at the chair, now lying on its side, an innocent, metallic victim. But it wasn't innocent. Nothing was. I wanted to deny it. God, I wanted to deny it. But the blood, warm and real on my skin, made denial impossible. My work calls went unanswered. My phone buzzed constantly with texts from Sarah, my colleague, and Alex, my closest friend, asking where I was, if I was okay. I just stared at the screen, unable to type, unable to answer. What was I supposed to say? That the world was trying to kill me, one mundane accident at a time? Then my mother called, Susan. Her voice was concerned, gentle. "Jacob, honey, Alex called me. He says you haven't been answering his calls. Are you all right? You sound off." Eventually, she just showed up. I heard the knock, hesitant at first, then firmer. I peered through the peephole. My mother, standing there, a worried frown on her face, a small basket in her hand. My heart leaped, a flicker of something almost like hope. But hope was dangerous. I unlatched the armchair, pushing it aside with a grunt. The locks were still triple-checked, but they didn't feel like enough anymore. I opened the door a crack. "Jacob! Oh, thank God! What is going on?" Her voice was laced with relief, but then her eyes widened as she took in the sight of me. My face was unwashed, hair matted. The wound on my temple was a scab, a dark, ugly patch against my pale skin. Her gaze swept past me, into the apartment. To me, my living room was a grim, dimly lit warren of supplies and makeshift barricades. The can pyramids were watchtowers in my mind, the stacked blankets, defensive walls. The windows, with their planks, were fortified positions against an unseen enemy. The air hung heavy with the smell of dust, old food, and that persistent, musty, metallic smell. But for her, I knew, it must have been a mess. Just a huge, cluttered, unholy mess. Empty takeout containers, dust everywhere. My few pieces of furniture looked like props in an abandoned set, covered in random items. My defenses were just piles of junk. "Mom," I said, my voice hoarse. It had been days since I'd really spoken. "Jacob, what have you done to this place?" Her eyes, gentle and usually full of warmth, now held a mixture of shock and sadness. She stepped inside, the basket still in her hand. I made you some of your favorite, honey, some orange cake and fresh fruit." She held out a plate, a slice of golden brown cake, glistening with glaze. My favorite. My stomach rumbled, a traitorous sound. My body craved it, craved the normalcy, the comfort. But a more primal, animal part of me screamed. "No!" I shouted, a raw, guttural sound that surprised both of us. My hand shot out, knocking the plate from her grasp. It clattered to the floor, the cake scattering in pathetic crumbs. My mother gasped, stepping back, her face crumpling. Her eyes welled up. I could see the pain there, the confusion. I looked around, desperate, my eyes darting to the far corner of the living room. Where the shadows were thickest, I could swear I saw it. A figure, impossibly thin, almost translucent, just standing there, watching us. Its head tilted, as if in silent judgment. It was observing, always observing. I started to sob, a ragged, ugly sound tearing from my chest. My hands covered my face. It's watching, Mom," I choked out between sobs, pointing vaguely at the corner. My mother didn't even look at the corner. She just stared at me, her face pale, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Oh, Jacob," she whispered, her voice broken. The way she looked at me, it wasn't annoyance, it wasn't anger, it was pity. And that's when I knew. This was it. She saw me, and she didn't just see a son struggling. She saw someone lost, completely. They say they had to give me a sedative. I remember flashing lights, muffled voices, my mom crying, Alex, his face grim. Then, just a long, heavy darkness. I woke up in a strange room, white walls. Too white. The air felt sterile, cold. Not the musty, metallic air of my apartment. This was different. I pushed myself up, my head still heavy, groggy from whatever they'd given me. I looked around. A single window, barred, a simple bed, a small table, and on the wall opposite me, a painting. It was an abstract piece, a swirl of shapes and colors. Blues, reds, yellows, greens, all mixed up, overlapping. A mess, but a vibrant mess. I focused on it, trying to make sense of the chaos, something to cling to in this unfamiliar space. I stared at one particular blue block in the painting. My eyelids felt heavy. I closed my eyes for a moment, just a second. When I opened them, the painting was still there, but the blue block, it was changing, fading, shifting. It was turning blorange. That impossible, sickening color I'd started to see in the fringes of my perception, in the glimpses of the ruined world, that color that felt like rot and fire. I rubbed my eyes hard, my heart starting to pound. Still dreaming, I muttered, trying to convince myself. Still half asleep. I blinked a few more times. The blorange still lingered, a faint, sickly hue on the canvas. I reached for the call button instinctively, without thinking. A few minutes later, a nurse, a kind-faced woman with tired eyes, walked in. "Everything all right, Jacob?" she asked, her voice soft, calming. "The painting," I said, my voice rough, pointing a trembling finger at the wall. "It's changing. The blue, it's turning blorange." She followed my gaze, a gentle, soothing smile spreading across her face. "Now, Jacob dear," she said, slowly walking over to the painting. She touched the frame. "That's a monochrome painting. It's all gray, honey. Been here for years." My breath caught in my throat. I stared at her, then back at the painting. My jaw felt slack. She was right. It was gray. Just shades of gray, from charcoal to dove. Not a single trace of blue, or red, or yellow, or blorange. Nothing. My mind reeled. The blorange had been there. I swear to God, it had been there. I could still feel it, a phantom color in my vision, a lingering burn. But she didn't see it. No one else saw it. Everything had changed. Not just the world around me. My eyes, my brain, my perception itself was being torn apart, and I was utterly, horrifyingly alone in it. They said I had to go to a facility, somewhere I could get help. My mother, looking worn and tired, came with a nurse to my apartment to help me pack a few things. She'd tried to clean up a bit, I could see that. Some of the cans were gone, the dust less thick. But to me, it still looked like a shell, a hollowed-out ruin. The shadows seemed deeper, the air colder. The musty smell was still there, a constant companion. I walked into what used to be my home office, now just another room full of boxes. On the back wall, a rickety old bookshelf stood, laden with books. A stack near the top, mostly old textbooks, looked particularly unstable. It was leading out, threatening to topple. I looked at it, then at my mother, then at the nurse, who was carefully gathering some of my clothes. They hadn't touched it. Good. They touched my defenses, I thought, a cold thought. The books were not just books. They were part of a wall, a barrier, a weak point. I knew it in a way that defied explanation. I found an old wobbly wooden stool in the kitchen. It was chipped, one leg shorter than the others. Perfect. I dragged it into the office, positioning it carefully beneath the precarious stack of books. I had to fix this, had to reinforce it, had to prevent it. I climbed onto the stool, my hands reaching for the books. They felt heavy, rough under my fingers. I started to rearrange them, pressing them back against the wall.
I even found a couple of thin, discarded planks of wood by the wastebasket, probably left from my futile attempt at boarding up the windows. I wedged them in between the books and the shelf, thinking I was shoring up the structure. I was stopping it, stopping the inevitable. I strained, pushing a particularly heavy volume back into place. That's when I heard it. A small, dry crack from my own shoulder. Not painful, not really, but audible, like something brittle giving way. And the sound, it echoed, a low, grinding crunch, then a sudden, sharp snap, like old, dried bones collapsing under immense pressure. That memory, that one, being crushed under debris, the slow, agonizing cave-in.
The room around me darkened. Not slowly, like dusk. It was like the light itself was being swallowed, pulled into some unseen vortex. The edges of the bookshelf, the table, the very walls became unnaturally sharp, hyper-defined, like they were cut from a different reality. And the stool, it started to tremble beneath my feet. Not from my own shaking, and no obvious earthquake. It was a deep, resonant vibration that came from the very floor, from the building itself. Panic seized me, cold and absolute. It wasn't just coming, it was here. I had to get off, had to escape. I tried to jump, to launch myself from the shaking stool, but it was too late. The pile of books, my defenses, lurched forward. They fell, not like books usually fall. For a horrifying, impossible second, they seemed to hang in the air, suspended, before gravity asserted itself with a vengeance. They crashed down on me with a weight that defied their simple mass, a terrifying, unnatural force. I tried to deflect them, to push them away, but they were too much, too fast, too heavy. One book, a thick, old dictionary with a sharp corner, struck my temple, exactly where the other wound had been. A blinding flash of pain. Then nothing. Just a silent, all-consuming collapse into darkness. I lay there, under the absurd pile of books and flimsy wooden planks, my eyes open, fixed on the ceiling. No sound, not a single creak, not a whisper. Just a profound, perfect silence. It was so thick, so heavy, I could almost feel it pressing down on me, crushing the air from my lungs. I felt the musty, decaying smell, the metallic tang, then, suddenly, a strange, sweet scent. Oranges. Bright, sweet, fresh oranges. I closed my eyes. When I opened them again, everything seemed to shift. The ceiling above me, the books weighing me down, the walls, the rug, they were all perfectly normal. Clean, intact. Not a speck of dust, not a sign of the decay I had seen for weeks. The warm, soft afternoon light streamed through the window, painting the room in peaceful, dusty golden hues. The doorbell rang. It was a cheerful, insistent chime. "Jacob, son!" My mother's voice, warm and full of hope, drifted through the door. "I brought you some things, fresh fruit and that orange cake you like." Everything was perfect, impossibly so. It was all erased, the madness, the rot, the decay, gone, reduced to nothing. My death, like my life, was just a trivial accident, another meaningless end. I took my last breath, alone in the sudden, eerie normalcy. Weeks later, the apartment was sold. My mother, my friends, they all said the same thing. Jacob Miller, a strange man, a recluse, and his death? A tragic, unfortunate accident. He must have been trying to fix something in his home office, they said, probably just lost his footing. So young. Such a shame. The new owners, a young couple, moved in a month later. They were excited, full of plans. They painted the walls a bright, cheerful off-white, bought new furniture. Everything was fresh, gleaming, new. One morning, the wife, Sarah, walked into her pristine kitchen to make coffee. Her brand-new coffee maker, a sleek stainless steel model, sat on the counter. She always placed it carefully, perfectly aligned with the edge. But this morning, it was noticeably off-kilter, angled just a fraction, ever so slightly to the right. And it was cool to the touch, with a faint sheen of condensation on its side, wet, even though she was sure she had washed and dried it thoroughly the night before. She frowned, looking at it, a mild sense of confusion settling in. Her husband, Mark, walked past, stretching. "Absent-minded again, darling," he chuckled, ruffling her hair. She shook her head, a small shiver running down her spine. The morning sun poured into the kitchen, bright and warm. But the shiver had nothing to do with the temperature.